Good morning, traders. How are you all doing today? Karibuni sana. Glad you could all join us this fine Wednesday morning. Hope everyone is doing well today. So, for those who are new, my name is Mitch Kanier, and I'm a trader with Afriforex. I want to welcome you to another Afriforex daily analysis session. Now, during this session, we have the Afriforex team who analyze the markets, identifying what trading opportunities we're looking at taking for the day, and we do share that information with you. I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but in any trading that you're going to look at, it doesn't matter what strategy you're going to using, whenever you're looking at the charts, you have to always follow a specific formula, DTM, direction, the timing, then the money management. So ideally within these sessions, we are at least helping you with the first aspect, getting the direction correct. At least once the direction is correct, we do end up also helping with the timing based on where you could potentially end up looking for your entries. So now the money management now is up to you. But ideally, if you want to know more about that, you can feel free to join one of our courses. Just feel free to go to afriforex.com. You should be able to get more education on that. So let's jump straight into it today. So as usual, we'll start off with our watch list. Now, in terms of our watch list, in fact, before I go to the watch list, let's end up having a look at some pieces of news. Now, there were some few fundamentals that did come out earlier today morning. We have some Australian and some New Zealand dollar fundamentals, some interest rate news. That still did continue to bring weakness on the New Zealand dollar as well as the Australian dollar. You can see nothing much for the rest of the day. We do have a number of speeches. Then at 5:30, we have oil news, and that's most likely going to affect the Canadian dollar rather than the US dollar. Then next, we just have a few FOMC meetings. So not necessarily that much activity, but based on the fact that Trump might be, or at least today, he should be adding his tariffs, or they should be being implemented. I think he increased the tariffs for China to 104% or something like that. So the markets could be volatile. But ideally, for right now, it seems the markets are quite fearful. So our watch list will pretty much remain the same. Nothing much has changed. It is still looking as if it is a fear-based market. Remember, when we mentioned it is a fear-based market, the commodity pairs, or you can be able to Google on that, commodity pairs such as the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, and the New Zealand dollar do end up showing a lot of weakness. And we do find strength on the Swiss franc as well as the Japanese yen. So you can clearly see we've been looking for buys on the Swiss franc against the yen. The euro is also on the buy side, but you can see all other pairs are going to be on the sell side. So we're pretty much going to be focusing on the exact same pair that we did have yesterday. So since we are going to do that, we'll end up looking at a few screenshots first before we do end up jumping onto today's pairs. So we're looking at the screenshots. We'll start off here with Alvin. Alvin, very happy to see a screenshot here today. It does seem like you love trading the British pound against the US dollar. Still, you did get a very nice buying opportunity right there. You can see the price did manage to get into your favor, going all the way till you take profit. So very, very well done on this. But one thing I would add, you did maybe enter it a bit early. I think one thing we do end up mentioning about the timing aspect of when exactly to enter. Always try and review your trades and figure out, were you a bit early on your trades or are you a bit late? So once you figure out maybe that you're a bit early on some of your trades, maybe try entering a bit later. Because you can see you did end up entering within a buyer's area right there. But you can see the buyers had not yet showed up. But you can clearly see within the sellers who did manage to push to the downside. Once the buyers did end up showing to the upside, you can see the price still managed to come back towards your area of interest, or at least where you managed to get your entry. And you can see from then on, the market did manage to continue going to the upside. I know sometimes you might feel a bit of FOMO, thinking that the trade is going to miss, or at least you're going to miss a trade. But ideally, you were a bit early. It still worked out, but maybe try and adjust and wait to see the big boy coming in. But still, very, very good job on this trade. Alvin, keep up the good work that you're doing. We can't wait to see more and more of your screenshots. So also next we get Ravin. Ravin, have to see a screenshot here. Similar situation, you were trading silver. We know silver did really end up dropping to the downside yesterday, but have to see you did manage to grab a very nice selling opportunity. Stop loss is still above your entry, but I do know you did manage this trade very well. So very good job on this trade, Ravin. And last but not least, we did have Peter. Peter, you did manage to grab a buying opportunity on the British pound against Canadian dollar. It seems that you took the weakness of the Canadian dollar into effect. You can see the price didn't manage to come up in your favor. You bought within an area where there are buyers. You can see the price coming up in your favor. You take profit within an area, or at least a take profit area where there are sellers. You should end up watching out for multiple other seller areas. You can see this area right here. That's where the seller really did push to the downside as well. So I do end up also hoping once the price gets to that area, you did end up managing your trade. But still, Very, very good job on this trade, Peter, and keep up the good work that you're doing. Remember, guys, if you do manage to take any setups based on things that we do share here today, feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details are in the video description below. You can send them in to us via WhatsApp, whether good or bad. We want to showcase you and at least celebrate your wins and the losses, ideally, because you will end up learning a lot more from those as well. So remember, guys, the link, or at least the number for that, is in the video description below. So let's focus on today's pairs. Let me just do this. So we'll start off with the Swiss franc pairs, mix and match them with the pairs on the sell side, move on to the Japanese yen, then do the same thing with the euro before we have a look at the indices as well as gold and silver. So starting off with the Swiss franc pairs, we have the US dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, yesterday, our bias on this kind of pair was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out and where the price was at that point in time when we were discussing this market early in the morning yesterday, where we did want one of two things, either a breach to the downside or a pullback coming in. Now, the pullback did start coming in to the upside, managed to end up reacting within this area, not necessarily at least within the main area that we wanted, did end up getting quite close. This was during the London market open, but we did get the price coming to the downside. Now, during the US market open, around 3 and 4:30 or so, during the New York Stock Exchange, we did get a small pullback, the price coming back within some sort of small support resistance area. And it seems for a lot of these pairs did end up moving at around 5 o'clock once the New York Stock Exchange did end up open. But you can see there was a small opportunity when the price did break to the downside and held below. Didn't manage to continue coming down, although that was a bit late at night, probably at 8 in the evening. Not too sure whether or not you would have been on the chart that time. But the bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. You can see the price has gone down lower. So we're going to be focusing on these three new areas of interest. So right now, you can clearly see we're within an area where they're biased. So definitely no selling opportunities just yet. The price has just managed to make a new low. So the main thing, remember, for us, we would want to do is wait for a pullback to potentially come in within the support and resistance area, give us some sort of probe or price action signal within this area before we're able to look for selling opportunities. So we'll be waiting to see what happens there. But remember, even though we're within an area where the bias, this price could still end up coming to the downside and potentially holding below. Remember, if we do end up seeing that, that should also give us another opportunity to be able to look for selling opportunities here on the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening, but the trade worked out. So let's wait to see if we can potentially end up getting that pullback. Now, the next Swiss franc pair we do have is the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out, but initially the price was within an area where the sellers, remember, you can even see based on this illustration that I had pointed out, wanted to see whether or not we would end up getting some aggressive sellers coming in within this seller's area. That happened during the London session where you can see the price managed to come down. I had pointed out that you need to watch out for this bias area because this bias could potentially give issues. And you can see that's exactly what happened. The price came back within this bias area. It was there during the US market open, where you can see the price managed to come back where that same area, giving us a pullback. And if this was at around 5 o'clock, remember I had pointed out, seems like at around 5 and 5:30, the markets did end up really taking off. So you can see in this situation, the price managed to come down lower. There was a small opportunity here because you can see based on the illustration I had pointed out, could end up either waited for the price to breach and hold below within this area. So around 6 p.m. or so, where you can see the market did manage to actually react within that area and manage to continue going down, making a new low. So today, the bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. You can see the similar correlation with the US dollar against Swiss franc, where we have made a new low, but we're within an area where they're biased. So remember, we need one of two things. And most likely for us, we'd want to see a pullback potentially coming in. We'll see whether or not we can get the price coming back in within this support and resistance area. This is an area of interest that we will be potentially looking for those selling opportunities from. Grabbing our selling opportunities right now will not be the wisest choice, but remember, if you do see the price breaking this area to the downside and you see the price actually holding below, if you want to be sure that that's an actual real breach, have a look at the other Swiss franc pairs. So if you see the Australian dollar against Swiss franc breaking this area to the downside, and you see the same thing on the US dollar against the Swiss franc, then you definitely know the Swiss franc strength is still coming in and will potentially be waiting for the second potential entry once at least the price breaks and holds below that area. But for now, we'll wait to see, hopefully, if we can be able to end up getting this pullback coming in. So hope that's clear on the Australian dollar against Swiss franc. We will move on to the next Swiss franc pair, which you can pretty much see it's pretty much correlated with all of them. Where here on the New Zealand dollar against Swiss franc, our bias yesterday was to look for selling opportunities. Now you can see where the price was. In fact, yesterday we did have a support and resistance area right here. Let me even just put a small level there. We did have a small SNR right there where we did want to see the price potentially coming back in and holding below. But remember, I also had pointed out that these buyers, where you can see this blue line, these are the buyers that are giving issues. So you could potentially end up either waiting for that area to be breached. And you can see it did end up doing that later on, but unfortunately, we did not necessarily get that pullback that we did end up wanting. But you can clearly see similar situation at around 5 o'clock. That's when the prices did manage to continue going down and making new lows. So today, the buyers here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. You can see the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc and the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc look very much correlated, mainly because the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar are both showing weakness. They're both on Asia, or at least active during the Asian session. So they do end up moving quite similarly at times. So in this situation, I think the game plan is pretty clear, or at least you should be able to know what it is by now. We'll be hoping to see if we can potentially get a pullback back within this support and resistance area for us to potentially look for those selling opportunities. But remember, the other alternative, because we have to have both options. It's not that you're only expecting a pullback, and if the price ends up coming down, you don't have any idea on what to do. At least if you do see the price doing one thing, then you know you'll do something else. If it does something else, then you know what exactly it is that you're going to do. Ideally, if you have a plan that you're ready in terms of whatever situation, you're never going to be surprised when you come onto the charts to at least see what is actually happening. So in this situation, we wait to see for the pullback, but ideally, it's pretty much correlated with the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, here we have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc, which is a similar situation. Yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out, three highlighted areas. Now, initially, the price was within this particular area right here, holding to the upside. Similar situation, I had pointed out, watch out for these buyers right here, because they do seem to be the ones giving issues. And you can see, even though once the price managed to come to the downside, these same buyers still managed to give us some issues. But remember, our highlighted area was right here. So once the price managed to go to the upside, it came back in and gave us another probe right here. Because remember, the level that we did have, so let's put a small yellow SNR, the level we did have was there. So you can see once the price managed to come to the downside, gave us another probe right there. And you can see the price managed to actually hold below that area. And that actually ended up giving us another selling opportunity to come to the downside. So today, the bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. I think you can clearly see the Swiss franc was showing a lot of strength, and they could potentially be starting some sort of pullback at the moment. So we'll wait to see if we can end up potentially getting this pullback coming in. Similar situation with the other SNR, because we've seen on all the the Swiss franc pairs, all of them had a push to the downside, and around 5 o'clock, that's when they actually started coming to the downside. So right now, we can clearly see the fact that there's correlation. So if they all start pulling back, that will give us a nice opportunity to potentially look for selling opportunities, especially if it does manage to approach within this main seller's area before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here on the Canadian dollar against Swiss franc, but overall, the bias here is definitely still to look for selling opportunities. So moving on to the next and last Swiss franc pair, here we do have the British pound against Swiss franc. Yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. This one would have been a bit tricky to get, mainly because we were within an area where there are buyers yesterday, because you can see we had this level right here, where we were hoping to see the price actually breaking and holding below. Now, it looks as if it attempted to do that earlier on, and this was around 3 o'clock during the US market open. Price attempted to come down, but at 4:30, the New York Stock Exchange, we did get a small spike to the upside, coming back, or at least stopping a number of people out before the price managed to continue. Similar situation, this was around 5 o'clock, but unfortunately, we could not necessarily get that pullback coming in. Once the price broke the downside, we did want to see the price potentially holding within that area before we're able to look for the sells. Unfortunately, that did not happen, but that's okay. We will be looking for more opportunities today. And overall, the bias here is still going to be the same thing. So you can clearly see it looks like we've been looking at the exact same pairs, and I've just been repeating myself, but sometimes that's also a good thing, because it does give you more confluence in terms of picking the right currency pair to actually be trading. So here, the game plan is still pretty much similar. Let's hope to see if we can end up getting this pullback coming back in within the support and resistance area. Or remember, we could end up easily getting the price breaking this area to the downside. And if we do see it holding below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here on the Swiss franc pairs, but we're definitely seeing the big boys are definitely putting their money in probably their Swiss bank account. So that's the reason why the Swiss franc is going to the upside. So hope that is clear on all the Swiss franc pairs. So right now we're going to move on to the Japanese yen pair and do the same thing. So we'll start off here with the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Similar story, had an area where there were buyers, or at least a problem area that could give you issues, since these are the areas where the buyers were pushing to the upside from. But you can see the illustration that I had pointed out. We're hoping to see either the price coming back in within this main seller's area, or if the price was able to break this area to the downside and hold below, could end up look for selling opportunities there. Now, this market did manage to end up just coming straight to the downside. We did end up seeing, looking as if it had broken to the downside. But in order to get that confirmation, remember, we want that pullback. Now, when the price was going to the upside, it looked like that was or at least it was a probe where the market did end up coming to the downside. But as soon as it came back in, there could have potentially been an entry opportunity there. And this was similar timing at around 5:30 or so. Seems that the markets have been moving around 30 minutes to an hour after the New York Stock Exchange. So remember, the New York Stock Exchange opens at 4:30. So that could be between 4:30 and 5:30, could end up seeing some movement. But you can clearly see the market really did continue coming to the downside. Did miss that opportunity. You can see there was another opportunity later on. Once the price was able to break this area to the downside, we got a pullback, confirming it was holding below. Although this was around 9 p.m., but you can clearly see the price did manage to continue going to the downside. So today, the bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. Now, we're pretty much going to have the same areas, mainly because we have not yet actually broken this low to the downside. You can see the price has come up. It looks as if it could potentially be breaking this area to the downside, but since it has not yet held below let me say that, then we have no idea whether or not it is an actual breach. But we'll wait to see if we are able to get this price. So one of two things could happen. This price could still give us this pullback back within this support and resistance area before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. However, if the price is able to break this area to the downside, remember, we want to see the price giving us a proper pullback and a hold below for us to look for those sells. One thing about the US dollar against the yen, if you look at this particular area, if we can go up to the 1 hour time frame, you can see we're within a major low right here, but look at how many times the market has actually probed this particular area. All these spikes within this particular location where the market has gone all the way even towards this area. So don't be surprised that the market has gone down and thinking that right now it has broken. Chances are most people were thinking the exact same thing when the price was there, but you can clearly see afterwards the price managed to go to the upside. So in this situation, let's wait to see what ends up happening. The proper hold to the downside, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities here. But if it's just a probe, chances are we should be coming back within this support and resistance area for us to look for those selling opportunities. So hope that is clear, at least on the game plan of what we're looking at doing on the US dollar against the yen as we move on to the next yen pair. So right here, we have the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. It is still the same situation today. And the areas that we did have, we have adjusted them slightly just based on the fact that the market really did end up moving quite a bit, especially due to the fact that the yen pairs right now, most people will be surprised that this move, or at least this move from all the way there to the down here, was over 300 pips. So this is still a big move to the downside. So there's no necessarily point of making it wider. So right now, we'll adjust the level to be focusing on this particular area. Yesterday, we wanted to look for selling opportunities. Remember, I had pointed out these buyers right here where the blue SNR is would potentially give us issues. You can see the price came down, bounced off that area, but we are hoping to see when the price broke to the downside that would potentially pull back towards that area. Unfortunately, the price did manage to continue going to the downside. But today, overall, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So right now, the fact that within an area where the buyers, definitely do not jump in on your selling opportunities just yet. Hopefully, we can end up getting this pullback coming in. So we'll wait to see if we can end up getting this pullback within this support and resistance area, some sort of probe or price action signal for us to look for selling opportunities. But be aware, even though we have this USNR that wasn't tapped yesterday, or at least we tested yesterday, there's still potential that this price can still come back all the way to that area before you see the price coming to the downside. So do end up watching for that. But overall, remember, as long as we're holding below the red SNR, our bias here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. So hope the game plan is clear, at least on what we're looking at doing on the Australian dollar against the yen as we move on to the next yen pair that we do have. So right here, it's the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. Yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. The levels are pretty much similar to the ones that we did end up having yesterday. As you can clearly see, we did end up getting, the price did end up reaching this area to the upside. We wanted one of two things, either more of a pullback or the price actually being able to break this area to the downside. Now you can see we got the price coming back in, showing us evidence this area was still a support and resistance area and holding to the upside. But it seems the area, or at least the location where the sellers did end up reacting from before, It seems that it did end up finding some sellers there. If you look at the time, that was around 5 o'clock, 30 minutes after the New York Stock Exchange did end up opening, and the price did manage to go down. But you can clearly see if this trade was difficult to get. You can clearly see once the price broke this area to the downside, we did get the price actually holding below, and it did manage to come to the downside. Now, this blue SNR that we did have was the area where they did mention that we need to watch out for those buyers, because these are the buyers who did manage to push this area to the upside. And you can see a similar story where the price did manage to come back, hold below that particular area, and actually give us a selling opportunity then. So this trade worked out quite well. But the thing is, we have not yet actually broken this particular low that we did have. You can see how many times that tempted and it's come back up, tempted twice actually. So overall, the bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities, pretty much focusing on the same area that we did have yesterday, still to look for the sells. But right now, due to the fact that we're within an area where there are buyers, it's not necessarily the best place to look for the selling opportunities just yet. Let's wait to see if we can potentially end up getting a pullback. Now, this pullback can come back within the blue SNR, or it could end up going up a bit higher within this particular level before we do end up finding the price coming to the downside. So there's potential for that, but remember, the yen pairs are very much correlated because all these yen pairs look pretty similar. So if you do see one of them breaking to the downside and actually holding below, then you definitely know chances are that that is an actual real breach, and you could potentially end up looking for those selling opportunities then. So let's see what happens on the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen, but I hope that is clear for all of you as we move on to the next yen pair, which is the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. The trades worked out very nicely yesterday. As you can see, our bias here yesterday was to look for selling opportunities. Now, the three areas that we did have, the price was already within an area where there are sellers, but we did end up wanting to find at least some aggressive sellers coming in. Remember, I had pointed out yesterday there were some buyers holding the market within that area that we did need to watch out for. And you can see that's exactly what happened, even just based on the illustration. We wanted to see what kind of reaction was going to come in, where the price managed to come down. It looks as if it was holding above, but later on, when it looks as if it came to the downside and held below, this potentially could have stopped a lot of people out because it looked as if it had broken down. But you can see at 4:30, the price managed to get back up to the main seller. In similar situation at around 5 o'clock, that's when the price did manage to continue coming to the downside. We get a small hold later, but that one would have been a bit difficult to end up grabbing. And you can see the price has come back all the way down towards the buyer's area. So overall, the levels are pretty similar. We're still going to be looking for selling opportunities, but within the area that we're at, it's definitely not the best place to look for yourselves. The fact that the way the yen pairs are very much correlated, let's wait to see what ends up happening. Hopefully, we can end up getting this pullback coming in, potentially within that SNR area. But remember, there's also potential for all these yen pairs to get a lot of strength. And if we do end up seeing that and we find the prices breaking the areas to the downside, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities. Similar situation here on the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here. But overall, game plan is to look for those selling opportunities. So as we move on to the next and last yen pair that we do have. So yesterday, our bias here on the British pound against the Japanese yen was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. And it's a similar story based on the fact that all the yen pairs pretty much be focusing on the same locations. Now, yesterday, the price didn't manage to give us a very nice entry. You can clearly see where we were early in the morning. We were above our main support and resistance area. And the main thing we wanted was the price to come to the downside and show us confirmation it was holding below. And you can see it did that, although not necessarily as cleanly as we would have hoped. During the London session, in fact, during the Frankfurt market open, that's when it started coming to the downside. Got a small hold below where the price came down lower, but you can see the US session did end up now giving us a proper test within the support and resistance area. And if we do end up asking, you can clearly see this SNR right here still held based on the fact that the market tested it, but it was just a probe. The hope would have been for us to look for potential entry once the price did end up pulling back. But you can see the probe did end up working out and the price did manage to come back down towards the main buyer's area. Now, the main reason why we have not adjusted the bottom level is based on the fact that we have not necessarily been convinced that this is an actual breach. So overall, we will still be looking for selling opportunities. I think if I go up to a higher time frame, can be able to end up identifying the next potential problem area within that location. So if we are able to get this price breaking this area to the downside, you can be able to take note of this price around 184.425. So that's where the price could potentially come down to. But for right now, let's hope to see if we can end up getting that pullback coming in. I think that would be ideally best for us because we never want to look for selling opportunities within a buyer's area. So hopefully we get this pullback coming in within this area. Remember, use correlation, especially with the yen pairs, because they do end up being perfectly correlated. So if one thing happens on one pair, chances are it's going to be happening on the other pairs as well. So hope the game plan is clear on all the yen pairs. As you can see, we have mixed and matched the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen with all the pairs on the sell side. So right now we're going to move on to the euro and do the same thing. So we'll start off here with the euro against the US dollar. Now, this pair took quite long to actually take off to the upside. I remember pointing out, I think when I ended up going to the 4-hour time frame on the euro against the US dollar yesterday, did point out that overall, we did end up seeming like we are in a trending market. We did have this support and resistance area where the price was holding. Once we did get a pullback, these bars managed to actually break that area to the upside. And all we were getting was a pullback back within that support and resistance area. And we were waiting for it to take off. We've actually been waiting for this since Monday. And it seems that yesterday is the day that it managed to actually take off. You can clearly see we've been waiting within this particular area. It gave us multiple probes within that location. Remember, I had pointed out, yes, we do want to look for a buying opportunity, but I did mention that these sellers right here, who are the ones who are actually pushing this price to the downside, those were the ones we needed to watch out for. Because you can see whenever the price got towards that area, those sellers kept on reacting. Still within that area, you can see we've got another probe. That location still reacting. But you can't even see based on the illustration, once we look at the price breaking and holding to the upside, you can see the price did manage to continue going up. Unfortunately, this was today during the Asian session. So unless you were awake at that time, you would have probably ended up missing this trade. But you can clearly see the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. We're still going to be focusing on the same areas that we did have to look for the buys. Now, right now, you can clearly see we did end up getting the price actually breaking this area to the upside. You can see we did end up getting a test a bit earlier in the morning where the price has managed to actually go to the upside. You can see the price does seem to be holding above. So overall, we'll wait to see if we can potentially end up getting these buying opportunities on this pair. But since the price is already coming up, hopefully we can end up getting this price coming, showing us evidence is actually holding within this area before we're able to look for buying opportunities. But be aware there's potential due to the fact that this blue support and resistance area that we did have yesterday, be aware that the price could still potentially end up pulling back towards that area. So even though we have this SNR, definitely you need to also think about who is the one buying right now. And when the price was moving to the upside, this is definitely the big boy who started buying at the bottom. So if they start buying at the bottom, chances are when the price is so high up, they will be closing their trades. And this is now when many people get the confirmation saying, now it's time for the buy. Not just to realize that you might end up easily getting stopped out, because if anyone is entering a buy now, chances are they're going to be putting their stop losses below this particular area. So that's the reason why I'm mentioning. Sometimes we've seen this multiple times where it looks as if the market is coming down. It stops all those people out, potentially comes back within this support and resistance area, then you could find the price actually continue going to the upside. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here, but do be careful about this. The way the buyers are coming up, they do seem to be slowing down a bit, but overall, we definitely know buys are in play on this currency pair. It's just a matter of exactly when you should be looking for those entries. So being able to get a nice entry down here will at least guarantee you some good profits on this pair. So hope that is clear on the euro against the US dollar. Let's move on to the next euro pair. So right here, we have the euro against the Australian dollar. Yesterday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the areas that we had pointed out, or at least the 3 areas. Now, the price didn't manage to end up giving us a pullback. You can see it came back all the way back down towards the main bias area. You can see this was around 5:30 or so, just after the New York Stock Exchange managed to end up opening. But the price didn't manage to go to the upside. You can see there was another small entry right there where the price didn't manage to break and hold above this area before you can see the price manage to continue going to the upside. So today, the bias here is still going to be looking for buying opportunities, but you can clearly see right now where we are within an area where the sellers. So the main thing for us we want to see is a pullback coming in. So these are our new levels that we'll be focusing on. Hopefully, we can end up getting this price giving us a pullback, hopefully within this support and resistance area where we could potentially find those buying opportunities. Now, you do need to be a bit careful about the euro against the Australian dollar. If you do go up to the 1 hour time frame, yes, you can see we have this support and resistance area here where the blue line is, sorry, where the yellow SNR is, but you can see how many times this price has managed to go to the upside within this particular area. So there's definitely some sort of location, or at least some sort of small SNR within that area as well. So even though we are hoping to see the price coming down a bit lower, you end up also watching out for that particular level, this blue SNR, because you could end up finding the market potentially reacting within this particular high. But overall, we hope to see the price coming down a bit lower Because I think most of you will know the concept of buy low and sell high. So hopefully if we can buy lower, then definitely the more profit we could potentially end up making. So hope that's clear. Let's wait to see if we can potentially end up getting that pullback coming in on the euro against Australian dollar. So right here, we're going to move on to the euro against the New Zealand dollar. You can see the same correlation that came in with all these, the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar, where we didn't manage to get the pullback. You can see the price yesterday was within this area where they're buyers. We did want to see some sort of global price action signal or signs of big boy buyers coming in. So you can clearly see there was no point in time that the big boy buyers showed up until later on. So you can see within here, the buyers were not necessarily within there. The sellers came down, but the buyers ended up showing within this area because you can clearly see the way they came to the upside. And after that, they still managed to actually break that area to the upside. You can see the price is holding above. That could have given you a very nice potential entry at that point in time. But you can clearly see the price managed to end up continuing to go to the upside throughout the US session. And we have managed to actually make a new high on this pair. So overall, the buyers, we are going to be looking for buying opportunities. You can see the prices have really gone to the upside for most of them. So right now, I think on all these pairs, the main thing we want to see is a pullback. Pullbacks ideally are how we end up looking for trading opportunities. It does give us a much better idea of where the market is going to go, and does give us the best risk rewards as well. So in this situation, wait to see what ends up happening. Hopefully that pullback can come back in within this support and resistance area before we're able to look for the buying opportunities. But remember the other option. Don't necessarily say you're waiting for a pullback. And if the pullback doesn't come in and the price goes to the upside, then you say you're not going to do anything. At least you should have a game plan just in case whatever situation ends up happening. But overall, definitely the bias here on the euro against the New Zealand dollar is to look for those buying opportunities. So wait to see what ends up happening there. We move on to the next euro pair that we do have. Here we have the euro against Canadian dollar. Yesterday, our bias was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the areas that we do have, but this even did have yesterday. Similar situation with the euro against the New Zealand dollar, where the price seems to be holding within that particular buyer's area. No signs of big boy buyers. The price looked as if it had actually broken this area to the downside, but you can see it came back up. But once the price broke to the upside, you can clearly see we got the price giving us a very nice pullback, holding to the upside. This was although around 8 p.m. But you can see from then on, the price really did manage to continue going to the upside. So overall, the bias here is going to be looking for buying opportunities. Now, we did have this blue SNR. Let me just go up to a higher time frame. The reason why the blue SNR is there is because, remember, we did have this main level right here. We did consider that all these moves to the upside, even though there were huge candles right there, these were just probes. Even though they were very big and quite large, they were probes. And that's the reason why I did end up pointing that blue SNR, mentioning that the market could end up reacting within that area. It seems the price did manage to continue going to the upside. We definitely seem to have broken this support and resistance area because it clearly seems to have been holding the market for quite a bit based on all these weeks that we did end up seeing. But the fact that the price has gone up quite confidently, definitely closing to the upside and holding above, definitely know the buyers are here, and that level has definitely been broken. So that's the reason why we did end up having this blue SNR, just at least to explain that. But today, the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. Hopefully, we can end up getting that price giving us a pullback back within that support and resistance area before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. So remember, as long as we're holding above the red SNR, our bias is to look for those buys. So hopefully, due to the fact that that level has held for quite a while, based on all those probes that we did end up seeing. So hopefully, the main game plan would be the price actually comes back in, shows us proper evidence is actually holding to the upside, and we could end up looking for a very nice buying opportunity there. So wait to see what ends up happening. But remember, the price could continue going to the upside because based on the fact that Trump could end up saying something else and other countries reacting, you never know how the markets are going to be. So wait to see what ends up happening. But overall, the game plan here is definitely still look for those buying opportunities. So last but not least, for the currency pairs, here we have the euro against the British pound. Now, yesterday, it seems, as I mentioned, all the trades did work out quite well. So here, our bias was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Game plan that we always mentioned, either breach the upside or a pullback based on the fact that we're within an area where there are sellers. Now, you can see the pullback did manage to come in throughout the London session. Can manage to come down lower, even at 4 o'clock, once the New York Stock Exchange opened, we did get a big push to the downside. This was definitely some sort of liquidity grab going to stop people out, at least get the money for them to look for buying opportunities. Because remember, if you want to buy something, you need someone who is willing to sell. So The fact that the price came down very aggressive guaranteed the 95% of traders where they end up chasing, all of them started selling within there. And the big boys, since they know in order for them to buy, they need sellers. All those people who are willing to sell at such a low price, they're very happy about it because for them, they're willing to buy at that low price and take it to the upside. Now, when it's obvious for everyone that it's actually going to the upside and the 95% are looking for buying opportunities here, they're big boys, in order to take the profit, they need to sell. So they'll sell to those people who are willing to buy at such a high price. And what happens after that? The price ends up coming to the downside. So that's the reason why for us, the main thing we always try and say, don't chase the market, wait for those pullbacks. And you can see we did end up getting a very nice pullback, or at least inciting people to sell. Buyers showed up and we can see the price gave us evidence it was actually holding above. That was just a probe. Even just based on the illustration that I had pointed out yesterday. You can see after that, the trade worked out quite well, coming to the upside. And today, the buyers here is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. So the fact that we're within an area where the sellers, remember, one of two things can happen. Either the price is going to breach the upside or a pullback is going to happen. But for us, the main thing we would want to see is a pullback coming in, because this would end up giving us much better risk to reward. As you can see, there's potential for it to actually end up making new highs. But for right now, we wait to see if we can potentially end up getting these pullbacks coming in on the euro against the British pound. So we are done with the currency pairs. So you can see we've mixed and matched the Swiss franc, the Japanese yen, and the euro with the pairs on the sell side. So right now we're going to have a look at the indices, then have a look at gold and silver. So we'll start off here with the NAS 100, the NASDAQ. So overall, yesterday, remember our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. Remember, within these pairs, we are purely technical, meaning as long as we're holding below the red SNR, our bias here is to look for selling opportunities. You can see where we were yesterday. We're in the middle of this particular area. We did point out we'd rather wait for either a pullback or at least a breach to the downside, or more of a pullback coming back in within the main sellers area. You can see that's exactly what happened. The price managed to give us a very nice probe within this particular area. So around 5:30, just after the New York Stock Exchange ended up opening, you can see we did end up having some sort of small support and resistance area here. Once the price broke that area to the upside, you can see the price gave us a pullback, confirming it was actually holding below. You can see from then on, the price did manage to continue going down lower. So overall today, bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. We are technically within the same exact areas. So remember, as long as we're holding below the red SNR, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. So if we do get the price breaching and holding above the red SNR, our bias will switch and we will actually start looking for buying opportunities then. But for right now, since we have managed to break this area to the downside, this central area, right now we're so close within the bias, hopefully we can end up getting this pullback coming in, potentially within this support and resistance area, for us to look for selling opportunities there. But remember, we never know how the markets are going to react, because Wall Street is very keeping the eyes on the ground, just waiting to hear what Trump could potentially say. We could easily find this price continue to go to the downside. If it holds below, we could find the price continue to go down, because the prices have been dropping for quite a bit. But remember, we will turn into buyers if we do end up breaking and holding above this red support and resistance area. So hope that's clear on the NASDAQ. As we move on to the Dow Jones, pretty similar correlation that did end up happening. Yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the price was within the middle of these two areas, and we did manage to end up getting the pullback coming in. Unfortunately, we could not get the price all the way to the main sellers area that we had hoped for. You can see the price attempted to go to the upside. Big boy sellers came in around 5:30. You can see a similar story with the NAS with the NAS 100. But once the buyers were coming up, the sellers came down very aggressive. There was a small pullback, showing confirmation that that level had actually been broken. And you can see from then on, the price managed to continue going to the downside. There was a small other opportunity later on, but you can see the price did manage to break and hold below, showing us confirmation that the price was actually holding below this area. And you can see the price has managed to continue going to the downside. So overall, the bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities, still focusing on the exact same areas that we did have. So as long as we're holding below the red SNR, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. So hopefully right here, since we are within an area where the bias, remember, you can be able to look at the correlation in both of them. They do seem to be correlating a bit now, but the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones are not necessarily always correlated. There are periods of time where one is going up while the others are going down. So overall, we wait to see whether or not we can end up grabbing those selling opportunities. But right now, since we're within an area where the buyers, let's hope we can end up getting that pullback coming in first before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So Hope that is clear on the indices. So we move on to the next currency pair that we do have, which is silver. Now, on silver, yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities, and pretty much due to the fact that you can't clearly see, we have not necessarily broken any of the major areas that we did have. We are still going to be focusing on those exact same levels. So you can see yesterday, the bias was to look for selling opportunities. The price managed to end up getting back within this main seller's area. You can see later on, this is around 4:30 during the New York Stock Exchange open, where the price then managed to end up actually coming to the downside. I had pointed out that we need to watch out for this area where they're biased, because they did seem to be giving some issues. You can see they did end up giving some small issues, but still managed to come all the way down to the main bias area. But with this reaction that we're getting, where the prices have not been able to actually make a new low, there's a possibility that the fact that this price right here, where the price has managed to react from and attempted to come down and make a new low, it's probably not good enough. Meaning, in order for the big boy sellers to actually sell, they need more buyers. So in order for you to, or at least to incite more buyers, chances are it could end up going up a bit higher. So if the price ends up going up a bit higher than this, remember all those late buyers start looking for those buying opportunities there. And the big boys end up saying thank you. And that's the reason why we always try and encourage. When you see that probe, especially because probes hurt because they trap a lot of buyers, or at least late buyers within there, and it gives a lot of money for the sales to actually work out. So that's the reason why you always hear us mentioning probes or price action signals. So if the price is not necessarily good enough, then we are potentially expecting this price to look as if it's actually going to go to the upside. And it might end up giving us some huge spike within that area before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. Could end up doing that, or it could end up even still coming back all the way up to the main seller's area. Because remember, in order for sales, we need to sell within an area where they're sellers. So these are clearly seeing some big sellers here, but there are definitely some more big sellers right there at the red SNR. But remember, here we're purely technical. So if the price breaks and holds above this red support and resistance area, at that point in time, we'll actually switch our bias and we will start looking for buying opportunities. But for right now, as long as we're holding below, we'll look for those sells. Right now, we hope to see if we can end up potentially getting a better price than this. And we'll wait to see those aggressive sellers before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So hope that's clear as we move on to the next and last pair that we do have, which is gold. So gold worked out nicely yesterday, but it does look similar to silver based on the fact that it has looked as if it's going for a better price. So overall, the bias here was to look for selling opportunities. And you can see the sales did work out yesterday. Since we are going to be focusing on the same areas, you can see the price is holding within this particular support and resistance area. Did mention to watch out for this bias area where it looks as if it attempted to break this area to the downside. As you can see, it was just a probe. So it's always very important to actually wait for that pullback. So you can see the price managed to end up giving us multiple probes within this area, showing us evidence to actually holding below. It only started taking off once the New York Stock Exchange did end up coming in. And you can see the price managed to come down all the way to the main bias area. But the fact that we've not been able to make a new low, it's no surprise that this price is actually going up higher. So right now, the fact that we have actually broken above this area right here, definitely most people who had their sells, or even when the price was coming back up, anyone who was entering sales here, all of them had their stop losses here. So right now, the fact that they've all been stopped out, chances that they're no longer thinking that it's a sell, they're now thinking it's a buy. So they'll be waiting to actually continue buying this, but they'll be buying it very late. For us, remember, we're potentially still waiting for those sells, wait to see what ends up happening. We are within a small seller's area. You can see sellers have reacted in that area before. This might be the better price that they're attempting to get. But remember, the price can still, so if we do see the aggressive sellers coming in and the price holding below, then we could end up looking for selling opportunities there. But even though we have this area, remember, the price can still come back all the way to the main red SNR before we're able to look for those selling opportunities there. And remember, if the price breaks and holds above this red SNR and holds above, at that point in time, our bias will switch and we will start looking for buying opportunities on gold. So hope that is clear on all the current pairs. As you can see, our watch list has pretty much been the exact same this week. But remember, we did point out, and that's the reason why we have this peer-based market chart, or at least watch list, because that's usually what happens. Even during COVID, you end up going back to do your research just to see what happened during COVID times, or even during the financial crisis. You will realize that at that point in time, all these pairs went down a lot, and the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen went up. So you end up seeing how that will end up working out for you. So I'm seeing a question here from Lyle. It's saying that small rally in the indices was due to fake news claiming said Director of National Economic Council, had stated a 90-day pause on the tariffs. Yeah, that one I know, because that one was the day before, where there was a rumor that was being spread that the prices were actually, well, it was going to be a 90-day pause on the tariffs, but it was fake. That was when this move did end up happening right here. So when the New York Stock Exchange opened that day, it spiked to the upside, but came straight back down. It's a similar story also with the NAS 100, where it did the exact same thing, although on the NASDAQ, it was a much bigger spike. Can't see all the way down there. It spiked all the way there and came back down. So, yeah, I truly agree with you, but the markets are reacting. You know, the markets at the end of the day, not it's based on what everyone else is thinking, especially the big money. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here. But you also are saying, given the current market scene, the Fed might be forced to cut interest rates on the lookout for this, as it might result in a relief rally. It could, because most people are saying that this could be a correction. But ideally, I think once we pass, is it 20% or so, we are technically within a bearish market. So in this situation, we'll wait to see. Things are still happening at the moment. You can't be able to go to any news site. You'll see the S&P is, well, you can be able to see a lot of news coming out. Many countries, or at least companies, especially in the States, are not very happy. China are going to end up retaliating, not necessarily only on tariffs, but given the cost of the fact that they have a lot of the elements, or at least there are a lot of precious minerals that they do end up having majority, or at least kind of like a monopoly on. And I think that is how they're going to potentially attack the US. But we'll wait to see what ends up happening. Even if the Fed comes in, the market, or at least most people, are not very optimistic and they're very fearful. And that's the reason why I am mentioning, just have a look at this fear-based market watch list, and have a look at times when the market was going through hard times. So 2008, during COVID, you can end up having a look at those times and you will see something similar. So when the market is fearful, that's what's going to happen. If something good happens, then potentially we could end up seeing the market rallying up. But seeing, even as you're mentioning, the Fed may be forced to cut interest rates, it could also be a similar situation with the fake news. How do you know what news is real until it is actually there? And that's the reason why there's that statement: buy the rumor, sell the news. Like, don't necessarily believe what other people are saying, especially if it's just analysts. Mainly focus on what you're actually seeing, right? But I do end up hoping, at least happy to see you here, Lyle. I'm glad for your discussions here as well. Potentially need to end up talking, so at least we see how you can maybe even take part, or at least give us some more info, because it seems like you do know a lot of the fundamentals that are going on. So I guess that's it. I'm not seeing any more questions, so thank you for your question, Lyle. Remember, guys, if you do manage to take any setup based on things that we do share, feel free to send them into us. Our contact details are in the video description below. Remember, if you do find value in these sessions, please like the video and make sure you subscribe. It does end up helping us out a lot. So once again, thank you guys so much. Hope you have an amazing trading day. God bless. Happy trading. And bye for now. Cheers, guys.